Yes, ma'am. You are on live.
Terrific. At 5:01, I'm calling the May 19th meeting of the Quality of Life Committee to order, and if we could get a roll call vote.
Councillor Jamie Cassett Sanchez.
Here.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Present.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Here.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Present.
And Chair Carol Romero Worth.
I am here. Thank you. Are there changes to the agenda from staff?
None from staff today, Madam Chair.
All right. Any changes from the committee? And if not, is there a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second.
All right. Not sure. That was like a nose finish. Councilor Rivera made the motion. I'll take Councilwoman Villarreal made us the second to approve the agenda for this meeting. If we could take the roll on this item as well.
Sure. Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Jamie Cassett Sanchez.
Yes.
And Chair Carol Romero Worth.
Yes. Fantastic. Do we have changes to the consent agenda from staff?
None from staff today.
Okay, terrific. Are there items the committee would like to pull? And if not, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilwoman Villarreal, a second from Councilwoman Cassett Sanchez to approve the consent agenda. Couldn't we take the roll one more time? Oh, and I skipped the minute. Oh, no, I didn't skip the minutes. That's next. All right.
Sure.
Roll call on the consent agenda. Thank you.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Jamie Cassett Sanchez.
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
And Chair Carol Romero Worth.
Yes. All right, now we go to approval of the minutes. We have the minutes from our May 5th meeting. Are there changes to those minutes from staff?
None from staff today.
Changes from the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion from Councilwoman Villarreal to approve the May 5th minutes of the Quality of Life Committee. Second from Councilor Cassett Sanchez. One more roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Jamie Cassett Sanchez.
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Yes.
And Chair Carol Romero Worth.
Yes. Fantastic. With that, we will move to, we don't have any action items for discussion, but we do have two presentations tonight. And Kira, we're going to do a youth update, and we have Director Ochoa with us, and then we're going to hear about the federal ARP funds, and we'll do those one at a time. So Kira, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the Quality of Life Committee. With me and not on the caption, though, that was an oversight, is Gina Rinaldi, who's directing recreation, and Melissa Bustos, our program manager for the youth programs. So we're going to be giving a joint presentation on the state of the city's youth programs tonight. And I just wanted to start out by saying, the day has come when we have one youth program at the city of Santa Fe, and we're very excited about it because for many years now, we've been talking about how to weave together the community services youth program that's been offered to a large number of students on a very reasonable sliding scale, and that's the program that is often offered in schools or at Monica Roy Ball. Free lunch and breakfast and snacks are served. And we've had anywhere from 500 to, at one time, I think 1,000 kids doing that program. And then we've also had the recreation program at the Genevieve Chavez Center, which has been extremely popular as well, with a focus on really teaching kids recreation skills and sports camps but it's been, at a higher rate for parents. And so we've merged the two programs together. All the youth specialists are now reporting to Melissa, who's long been running the recreation program, and it has an excellent reputation. So all the staff is unified and all the training is unified, and hopefully we expect that the quality of the programming will be unified as well. And so any young person in the city of Santa Fe, regardless of their income, whether it's high, low, middle, will have access to the same quality of programming. And so with that, I just wanted to let Director Rinaldi say a few words, and then we'll turn it over to Melissa, who has a PowerPoint.
Good afternoon, everybody. Chair, counselors, thank you for allowing us to come before you and kind of give you an update. Again, my name is Gino Rinaldi. Most of you know me as Mr. Senior, or Mr. Senior Citizen, but many of you don't know that I have a strong background in working with youth in at-risk programs. I was the director of the youth programs at Servicios de la Raza there in Denver. It was started by the Chicano activist Corky Gonzalez, and I oversaw their human services programs, of which we had at-risk youth, we had workforce investment programs with youth, we ran the Safe City programs. So it was quite a range of different programming targeted at trying to work with, obviously Latino youth or at-risk Latino youth, but it was youth in general. And I'm excited about it, and I look forward to working with Melissa on this and trying to assist her in achieving greatness. And that's what we're out to try to do. So Melissa's got a PowerPoint presentation. Are you able to share it, Melissa? Chair, if that's okay. And then we'll go from there, and we'll turn it over to Melissa.
That'd be great. Thank you. Welcome, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair and counselors. My team and I are super excited for summer camp. I'm going to go over a brief presentation of Summer Camp 2021. So this year, more than ever, the youth of our community are in desperate need of physical activity and socialization. The pandemic has taken its toll on all of us, and only by working together can we return to a new, better normal. Our goals are to safely reopen and reconnect with the youth in our community, to reestablish our role as providers of reliable, affordable, and quality childcare to as many families as possible. There will be a new structure, new supplies, new attitude. The City of Santa Fe youth programs are eager for a fresh start and to establish and maintain our high standards for quality programming. The camp fees will be on a sliding scale fee structure. Fees are determined based on family income. A more inclusive fee structure allows more families to participate and be enriched. Below is the fee structure that we will be utilizing this summer. We've partnered with the Santa Fe Public Schools, who have provided a total of 6 sites to host our programs in, and they're positioned conveniently throughout the city to meet the needs of our families. The sites will be using our Nina, Otero, El Camino Real, Chaparral, Kearney, Gonzales, and the Teen Center will be at the Chavez Center this summer. We can serve up to 100 participants per site. Currently, we have 335 youth enrolled across all sites as of this morning. All programs will receive the same level, or all sites will receive the same level of programming and follow a structured schedule. All COVID safe practices will be adhered to at all times to ensure the safety of our youth and of our staff. There will be a strict 15-to-1 child to staff ratio. Our emphasis will be on attentiveness and engagement from staff to campers. Children will be grouped together based on age. So 6 and 7-year-olds will be together, 8 and 9-year-olds will be together, and then 10 through 12-year-olds for the elementary age participants. And then the teen center will be divided into 2 age groups, 13 and 14-year-olds, and then 15 through 17-year-olds. Activities will be fun, educational, and safe. Our focus is on recreation and keeping the youth active, while also incorporating art and educational activities. Thanks to our partnerships with ArtSmart and the Community Educators Network, we're able to do that. So we've partnered with these programs, and the partner programs will visit each site per week and rotate through all of the schools over the course of the summer, providing variety and aiding in educational retention. This partnership also allows us to provide specialized programming that is not always accessible to all families. And lastly, as restrictions are updated, we aim to expand programming and incorporate swimming, ice skating, and special guests back into our schedule.
Thank you, Melissa. As you can see, a lot of effort has gone into the planning for this, both in terms of the COVID safe practices as well as the partnerships with the community. I think what we're hoping to achieve here, and we believe we can, is a really nice blend of the kind of homespun, down-to-earth touch that the community services programs had, where there's a real, strong relationship. And this was true in recreation, I'm sure too, between the staff and the students, the young people, so that those relationships are key, as we know, to being protective factors for youth. A place where youth can feel safe, and also get a really great high quality program this year, for many more than we've been able to do in the past. So with that, we'd stand for questions.
Great. Looks like we have a number of questions. So let's go, Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Bustos, for taking this on. This is a lot of work above and beyond what you do at GCC. So thank you for taking it on. Do you have a list of sites that we're going to be using this year?
So yes, let me go. Give me just a second. So we're going to be using Nina Otero, El Camino Real, Chaparral, Kearney, Gonzales, and then the teen center will be at the Chavez Center.
Great. Thank you for doing that and keeping everything in close proximity to working families. I think that's important as well. In the past, I'm not sure there's been a strong presence of actual city supervision over the sites. Will that happen this year? Will you or somebody from your staff make frequent visits to the sites?
Yes, so I will be visiting the sites throughout the day, and I also have a supervisor that will be assisting me. So we'll spread ourselves out to each site, so we're available to support the staff at each site.
Great, I appreciate that. And then I assume that you have access, I don't know if there'll be field trips or anything, but I assume you have access to the vans that were used previously. Are those still accessible? And are field trips going to be part of the curriculum this summer?
So we do have the vans, but unfortunately adhering to the COVID safe practices and distancing the children 3 feet apart, it's very hard to accommodate at this time. So we're hoping to bring field trips back in 2022.
All right, and the last question I had relates to COVID, and really children under 12 still aren't able to be vaccinated. So are you limiting the number of kids that can be at each site that are less than that age, or just following best practices as best possible?
It's a combination of both. We're following best practices, and there will be 33 children per age group, and we have a system that works. You know, the schools have set up all of the COVID safe practices to keep the children ensure their safety.
All right, thank you. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Counselor Cassett Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following up a little bit. Well, first of all, thank you for being here and thank you for for getting this program up and running this summer. I know kids really need it, and parents really need it too, based on a lot of the conversations I've been having with my peers. So thank you for this work, for getting this up and running, and I really do appreciate it and appreciate the presentation. I wanted to follow up a little bit on, so I think I was reading through the slides. We have 7 sites, correct? And 100 kids available per site. So we could have 700 kids total?
Yes.
So I did that math correctly? Okay. And then do we,
Six.
oh, we had 6 sites. So 600 kids total that we could serve?
Yes.
Okay. And then you said 33 children per age group. And I'm assuming that's across no, that would be per site.
So,
Sorry,
so-
I need the numbers. Math is not my forte.
So at each site, we'll have 3 different age groups. So A team is 6 and 7-year-olds, B team is 8 and 9-year-olds, and then C team is 10 through 12-year-olds. It's really 99, but we can serve 100 children.
Okay,
at each site.
perfect. Thank you. And then at the teen center, we'd be able to have 100 teens there?
Yes, that is correct.
And then in the past, have we gotten that many teens within the programs?
Just taking them on, and historically going off of numbers from 2019, there were 40 teens registered in the program. And we currently have 32 this year registered as of right now.
Wonderful. And then if we don't fill up to that max teen capacity, do we have the capability to move to other age groups if there's, I mean, right now we're not maxed out anywhere, but would we have the capability to shift to, if we do have wait lists in some of the other age groups, if we don't hit those teen?
Unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay. And does that primarily have to do with space and COVID safe practices?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. And then what are the hours that the program is offered?
So camp runs, the dates of the program are the first day of camp is June 7th. We will end on Friday, July 23rd. And the camp runs Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m.
Okay, and then so I think that in terms of Santa Fe Public Schools, it'll be about 2 weeks after camp ends before schools start. And has school ended yet? No,
No.
on the front end too.
And yeah, and Santa Fe Public Schools return back August 6th.
And Madam
Okay.
Chair, Councilor Casa Sanchez, if I may, to that question, we needed to vacate the schools 2 weeks in advance for Santa Fe Public Schools to prepare for their opening year, which is why our camp ends on the 23rd.
That makes sense. Thank you for pointing out that very obvious point that I should have thought of, but I appreciate that. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you again. I'm really, really happy to see that this is going to be up and running this summer. I know it's a heavy lift, so thank you all for your work and for putting the programs together. I'm really, really excited to hear about it. So I hope that we'll get a recap at the end. Thank you.
Great. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Ms. Bustos for your presentation and your long commitment to our youth programming. I appreciate all that you've been doing. And also, Gino, I didn't know you knew Corky Gonzalez. How exciting that you got to work with him. My best friend, that's her uncle. That was her uncle. So I guess I was just I was thinking about where where everyone would be situated. I'm glad that we're utilizing the schools. And then I was thinking about Monica Roybal. Is that facility just out of commission now, or is it just because it's too small?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, the senior program is currently using the Monica Roybal Center to stage wellness checks, assessments, distribution of food at this point as part of the whole COVID operation for the senior program. And so I think trying to find another location would have been much more difficult. The other piece is, as we know, Monica Roybal is in need of repair. It needs some attention, and so we felt like we have an incredible facility at the GCC and the other schools to kind of spread it out. That would give us at least a good start, and hopefully we can begin to look at that. Also, when you look at the demographics of the city, we recognize that it's really changing. The downtown, that area is really changing, and we have to start asking the questions: is this where we really want to concentrate some of these efforts, or do we need to start looking at getting them closer to where as to quote Councilor Rivera, the working families, and try to assist them. So those were some of the things that weighed into it at this point. But it's definitely one that we have to really come up with conversation and take more in depth. So.
Yeah, I think that's probably for another day to talk about that facility and how we're going to be utilizing it into the future, because there's still potential. I don't know what that is, but I just, maybe in the future we can talk about what that's going to look like. I mean, it's Monica Roybal, and then it's also the other facility that's perpendicular to it. I know it has a different name, but I'm forgetting what it's called. But just to flag that, I think that's important to think about in the future, since that was utilized heavily. What's that?
Ortiz, isn't it?
Carlos Ortega Teen Center.
There we go. Thank you. Carlos Ortega's Teen Center.
Ortega. So, I knew I had an O.
Between those two, though, I'm just wanting to flag that because we haven't talked about those facilities in a while, and they need a lot of work, and they've been utilized in the past quite a bit, and with its issues. So I just want to think about that, like what's going to be next for those facilities. So I was actually surprised 335 youth have enrolled thus far, which is great, but I was actually thinking it would be higher at this point. Do you think there's less? Well, I don't know, maybe give me your take on that. Like why you think maybe at this time 2 years ago, was the enrollment higher than 335 a month before the programming was going to start?
So coming from the Chavez Center end of it, we were definitely at capacity, and we could serve safely up to 150 youth. Looking back to numbers in 2019 from the Youth and Family Services camps, it was 531. So I think that's a good number. 335 as of right now, coming out of a pandemic or still in a pandemic, I think 135 is really good.
Yeah, I think it's good. I'm just curious why you think maybe it's lower. Do you think it's for fear of COVID? I'm just curious what you think or what you've heard from families.
I think it's a combination of both. Fear. I know there's a lot of parents that are still working from home. And yeah, so I think it's a combination.
And Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, if I may, we often saw in community services kind of a rolling, entry into the program and a lot of really last minute registrations, so we may see that again. It is also good to note, or important to note, that our registration process is different this year for COVID safety. So that may be slowing things down just a little bit as well, but we won't really know, I think, until we start. And it's also very word of mouth, once things get going, we can see a surge in those registrations as well.
Good. I mean, I think this is exciting that we have this option, that we are able to pull it off and take the time to really think about the COVID practices. I know it's a lot of work to figure out all those details. So I appreciate all that you have done. The one last question I had is, I was curious who your special guests were going to be.
You.
So we like to bring in like the fire department, the police department. We've brought in like the wildlife center from Espanola. I've also been working with Christy Brusso from this American Red Cross that's going to do some presentations with the youth. And so as many as we can get. I know that there's a lot of youth organizations that are still can't go out to the campsites, but we're going to try to bring as many special guests as we can in.
And Melissa, can you talk about I'm sorry, Council.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure she mentioned the wonderful thing she got going, which is the artist in residence program.
Oh yes, so we've partnered with ArtSmart, and we've utilized them in the past here at GCC, but this is super exciting. So they're going to bring in visiting artists to different sites, campsites throughout the summer. And like 1 week, it's going to be, they're going to work with the youth to do murals. And then after the kids, do the murals, they're going to put them out in the community. We will also have like a visiting artist, African artist. So the diversity is really awesome to be able to expose the youth to that and give them that experience.
Excellent. And those partners that they're bringing in, I'm just curious, do they pay the artists like a stipend to participate?
They do, yes.
All right. Well, good luck, and it'll be great to see. I'm sure a lot of kids are excited to get out of their homes and be able to see others. So I wish you the best of luck.
Parents want them out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's right. Well, yeah, possibly. Maybe the parents would also want to be at these programs. So thank you so much. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Great. Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kara, Gino, and Melissa. Super excited these programs are getting put back into action. I was a participant in these programs growing up. I remember spending a summer over at Carlos Rey Park over off of Camino Carlos Rey. So many fond memories, spending some time with some friends. And I guess thank you for bringing that back. My question was asked by Councilor Villarreal in regards to the Monica Roybal Center, in regards to why we weren't using that facility, given, I know that was a hot spot during my younger years as well, I actually was a clever rider on the block, but I remember going over to the Monica Roybal Center. We'd play intramural basketball games, sports games against each other. So I know that was a hot spot. So thank you for the update. And I agree with Councilor Villarreal. Let's look at how we might be able to utilize that space in the future. And then Councilor Villarreal asked why only 335, and maybe as a parent I can help put some perspective. I know that in my situation, both me and my wife are working from home, so there's no need to send them to a recreation center or facility. We're actually going to be doing some virtual type of recreation stuff with them. So maybe that's what parents are doing. I look at it as an opportunity. It's not so often that we get to be at home while we're working and spending the summer with our kiddos. So I think maybe that's why numbers might be a little lower. And then you might, as Kara said, as summer goes on, see as folks return back to work, numbers go up, down, dwindle. But maybe that has an impact on that as well. But thank you guys for getting these programs. I know, those 335 that are signed up thus far are gonna have a time of their life during this summer, and with the activities that you have planned, whether it's the ArtSmart or the special guests, those are impactive situations that are going to, mold our youth. So thank you for setting up these programs. With that, no other questions, Madam Chair.
Perfect. I just have one question, which is if somebody is interested in signing up, how do they do that? Where do they go?
So to schedule an in-person appointment, they'll visit the City of Santa Fe website, so santafenm.gov. Then there's a little blue box that says youth programs. You'll click on the blue box. On that page, the Sign Up Genius link is there. They click on the link and they can schedule an appointment to register.
Terrific.
And they call.
Yes, and if they
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Melissa, can they call?
If they don't have internet access, our numbers are listed on that website, and we can help them schedule that appointment.
Okay, terrific. So about half full and room for more, and we can help spread the word. Councilor Casa Sanchez.
Melissa, can you give us the number? Because if they don't have internet access, they won't be able to look it up on the website to see where to call. So,
Sure.
So we have it too.
Okay, so my direct line is 505-955-4005.
Great.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilor Rivera.
Melissa or Gina or Kira, has there been a press release sent out with those numbers and the way to access the website to get kids signed up?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, yes, a press release did go out. And there's also a flyer that's been sent out in every backpack, I believe, from the Santa Fe Public Schools. And Melissa, did we do robocalls on this as well? Were we able to get that going? No.
We weren't able to do robocalls, but we do have a radio ad on Keswave. So there's that. And then it's available we're on all of our social media outlets.
And Madam Chair, just for information, I guess, I used to be a youth worker, and the site I was assigned to was Monica Roybal, and this is when I was 17 or 18. So you know how outdated that facility is.
So is that like 1950?
I can't give specific dates, but a little bit later than that.
Is that CR initials on the wall there by the water fountain? Just
I
teasing.
can't confirm or deny that.
Right.
Okay, terrific. Definitely. Gino, you've got your hand waving in your box.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the committee, I want to thank you all for your support, particularly with the budget. This was, I stepped in and, to look at, what we were envisioning and to look at the budget, that was going to be frustrating. And you guys, I think, really stepped up and helped us so that we can do what we got to do in the community. And so I really appreciate it. I saw nothing but support. So thank you.
Yes. Well, and we know that childcare programs are stretched, shall we say. So I think there are lots of people looking for these things. So wonderful that you all put this together, and definitely needed. So thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. With that, we're going to move on and look forward to hearing about how it goes. So congratulations on getting it going.
Thank you.
We have Rich and Kira to talk about what we've all been waiting for, is the federal ARP funds and the guidance that has come down about how we can use those funds, and then some of the thinking that started about how specifically Santa Fe will use those funds. So welcome, and take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening to everyone on the committee. Let me just share my screen and we can start. So I have a few slides to talk about the America Rescue Plan Act. Actually, they call it ARPA. We just received some Treasury guidelines. They're interim guidelines. So what you see is kind of the first glance of what I've been able to learn over reading 152 pages. I've been attending a couple of national webinars from the National League of Cities, Council of Mayors, et cetera, just to get my arms around what this means to us. One of the big takeaways I just want to let you know is that this ARPA Act, this recovery plan, is about redress from the past. And then Congress is working on jobs and infrastructure, which is help for the future. So when we talk about the ARPA Act, it's really about the effects of the pandemic and the pandemic recession in cities across the country and how we can help with recovery and making people whole from that standpoint. So with that, I'm going to go through the slides, and Kira is going to work with me. She has a couple slides on community services. So the American Rescue Plan Act, which is again called ARPA, is corresponding to the COVID-19 emergency. There is $350 billion that's going to state, city, county governments and what they call coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, or CSFLR. And there are three key things that these funds are supposed to do: is to help to turn the tide of the pandemic, address economic fallout, and then lay a foundation for a strong and equitable recovery. And again, that's where the second half of what's being debated in Congress is all about, is that if we can build people up to a certain level, then this jobs and infrastructure will take us to a new level of resiliency and recovery. So the city of Santa Fe stands to receive over $15 million, but in a first tranche of $7.5 million, which we hope to have hopefully in the next 6 weeks. Finance is applied for the first tranche. So once we have that money, then we can start to put something into place. This is a lot of notes here, but this is basically part of what the Treasury wrote. This is one of 152 pages, but they say support public health expenditures, behavioral health care, et cetera, all those things affected by COVID, address negative economic impacts. That's me helping with small business. That's Kira looking at households that may have rent or may be evicted, et cetera. Replace public sector revenue. This is a revenue replacement for cities that were affected. Their deficits were dropped. They don't have a rainy day fund, or they used all the money for COVID work. This fourth one is about essential worker premium pay. That's something I'm still sort of reading through with the Treasury, but it's really about essential workers and health risk. So a good example is of a restaurant that had essential workers. Everyone worked there and they couldn't take them out in sick pay. So this is a great way to sort of look at maybe providing sick pay for those who had gone out because of COVID. And then the last one is just invest in infrastructure, water, sewer, and broadband. We are currently working on broadband and public Wi-Fi on the south side of 87507 and want to move it actually into the Hopewell Man neighborhood. So this is a helpful funding for us so that we can hopefully start to accelerate it throughout the city in areas that are underserved with this big digital divide. So one key other thing I wanted to take away is that this recovery plan talks about money being spent in qualified census tracts. And so when I was looking through this Treasury Act, there are 4 different qualified census tracts that they list for the city of Santa Fe. Even though we have opportunity zones here, and one more over here. So I don't know whether opportunity zones fit into it because it's really based upon high poverty, high unemployment. And so I'm digging into some data. I'm actually getting a data report done on these census tracts, but these are the areas of the city where any program we put in place is instantly eligible. And so if we're putting in other programs or services in other parts of the city, we just have to make sure that we understand the high poverty, high unemployment numbers outside these qualified census tracts. So allowable uses, they talk about non-exclusive lists, intervention for qualified census tracts, public health, direct aid, et cetera. Encourage expenditures include addressing racial disparities, inequities, and disproportionate harm. So we know that through this pandemic, a lot of inequities were put in place with our community. And so Kira and I will sort of look at with our team how we could address this with some of this ARPA money. Prohibited expenditures includes pension funds, legal settlements, et cetera, things we can't put into our balance sheet to make up for. So this sort of section here was, again, a framework to access this eligibility, which is where I think Kira and I and the team will have to look at the programs that we might create to send out into the community. How do they affect these 4 pieces? Because this may be what we're measured on by the US Treasury when we have to do our quarterly reports back to them. Again, I talked about the tranche of funds. The city of Santa Fe will receive $15 million over 2 years. 50% will be sent to us hopefully in the next 6 weeks. We've just applied for that tranche, $7.5 million. The balances due are coming to us about 12 months later. And it's basically, they have a qualification. We're a metropolitan district, which means we're 50,000 citizens or over. Those cities that are under 50,000, the money comes to the state and then the state distributes it to them. So we're very excited the fact that we are a metropolitan city and we're able to get the money directly, which is a good thing. Ineligible uses, I kind of talked about that. Matching requirements, this premium pay based upon where you are in the city, pensions, infrastructure not addressed by the ARPA, rainy day funds, and outstanding debt. So I'm working with the finance group just to make sure they can sort of categorize where we may not hit this guardrail as it relates to money that could be used for our city, our budget. So possible funding, I put it into 3 categories. Again, budget replacement, revenue replacement, invest in wraparound community services. That's where Kira comes in. And then pursue economic recovery and resiliency. That's where economic development and community development comes into play. We'll go into a little bit of detail in a second, but I just want to give you a sense of how it might be broken out. So if it comes to the infrastructure side, that will be where the city budget revenue piece will come into play with water, sewer, and broadband. So Kira, I'm going to turn it over to you to sort of talk a little bit about Connect, the community services side.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. So, you know, as we learned when we were able to push out $5.1 million in CARES money out, mostly in direct relief to the community through the Connect program, that's a really effective way to help people and help families. And, you know, in talking with community partners like, you know, Somos and Pueblo Unido, Chainbreakers, Mutual Aid Society, they're actually, those organizations and others are seeing a kind of increase in people calling for assistance now. You'd think it would be leveling out. And we know that there have been obviously federal and state programs that intended to help folks, but people are still struggling. What we've heard from partners is, although some people are definitely getting back to work, childcare remains a challenge and others aren't able to get back to work. And then a lot of people are actually paying down debt that they accrued during the pandemic. And sometimes, you know, debt at very, unfortunately, high rates of interest. So there's still a lot of need for direct cash reimbursement, which we found so effective in the fall. And we intend to activate that again through the Connect network. We learned a lot through doing that. You know, some of you may have heard that the state has a rental assistance and utility assistance program, which is wonderful. But many residents in Santa Fe are not able to go through that process. It's very onerous. The landlord has to essentially apply with them, and that's not always feasible. And so a lot of that money is just kind of going to sit there, unfortunately, I think, because it's just not, it's not flowing in a way that's sort of user-friendly. So Connect had figured that out during the pandemic and during the fall and the CARES money distribution. So that worked, and we hope to, you know, do that again. I think with the longer time period to disperse that money, it's going to be really helpful. And looking at outcomes, I think that'll be really, really interesting, you know, being able to do some evaluation follow-up with folks and families. How did you use that money? Where are you now? Are there people that we can identify that are going to need some sustained help beyond a one-time payment? And can we set it up to, you know, sort of approximate a little bit of a guaranteed income or a more regular flow of income for certain folks? So we're looking at all of that. And then, you know, we want to see food and housing and security support for nonprofits. So many of our nonprofits, Food Depot, you know, Youth Works, the list is too long to even say here. went so far above and beyond and are still doing so to meet community needs. And, you know, some of that, some of their difficulty is in staffing and operational costs, and how do we reach out to support those things. We have a little more time than really what boiled down to 6 weeks back in the we have 3 years now to kind of work on bolstering up our safety net, and seeing how we can do that. I don't want to neglect talking about behavioral health needs. You know, behavioral health needs, which were already acute in Santa Fe County before the pandemic hit, are more acute than ever. And we don't have, you know, sort of the long-term surveillance data from BRFIS and DOH yet. But what we do have is a lot of very concerning indicators. You know, Krista St. Vincent telling us that they've never seen as many people on ventilators who are on ventilators because of overdose and suicide attempts as they're seeing now. They're seeing many fewer people, obviously, on ventilators for COVID, but majority of the people are about in there for behavioral health needs. Our police department, you know, has started to collect the calls for service for psychiatric calls, and we don't have a baseline on that, but we have about 420 calls since June that are classified as psychiatric disturbance calls, and that's very high. You know, we have the Connect program is making more referrals than ever for behavioral health, so we know that's a huge need. What are we getting? What's the barrier there, and how can we help people access behavioral health services with these ARPA funds is a question that we're really exploring. One thing that's exciting is we have a partnership in the works with the Community Foundation, with the Santa Fe Community Foundation, to host a Connect fund, which is essentially going to be a wellness fund with the flexible monies. And some of those may be allowable for people to pay directly for behavioral health services. You know, there's a huge waiting list if you're on Medicaid and Medicare. Sometimes we have providers who aren't able to take those insurances. So exploring with legal whether it's allowable, you know, to use some of these funds to help people just directly get what they need in the way of behavioral health. Also, obviously, our alternative response unit is one drop in the bucket of what we could be offering the community. And if we can expand those teams with these funds, that would be another interesting thing to explore. My wish list is long based on all of the input we're getting from community members and the needs, and we're going to really need to prioritize, but that's some of the thinking that we're engaging in right now. Obviously, anything to do with vaccination outreach, we want to be able to continue to support. And then actually the last bullet goes to sort of what I was talking about with behavioral health as well. You know, you can have all the resources in the world to help people access help, but if there aren't the helpers to help them, it doesn't mean a thing, right? So you really have to think about how to build a case management or navigation workforce in Santa Fe. Provider after provider wants to hire people in this field and is unable to. And so working with the community college to potentially develop a workforce training for case management and navigation is another angle we're looking at. And that's both a community services need and an economic development need. And so those are some of the things we're looking at. Thanks, Rich.
Sure, thanks, Kira. And then on the community and economic development side of recovery, I kind of broke it into a couple of categories. We talked about direct relief to individuals and families, which I think Kira had explored. And then on the small business recovery side, we're looking at, we have a number of small businesses that did not receive any grant relief from the CARES Act program because it just happened on a poof. And so we're looking at once we receive the money, we're looking at possibly giving them a relief grant, just an automatic relief grant based upon their qualified census tracts from this program, just as a stipend for relief based upon the effects of the COVID pandemic. We're also looking at a Jumpstart technical support program for small businesses. There are a lot of small businesses that are just basically treading water. And we're looking at a program where retired business people come in and sort of help businesses restart and jumpstart. So it's a way for them to look at how they can build a recovery plan and resiliency plan. And then we're also looking at further support for business incubation because a lot of companies did grow and they could take that next step to be in a business incubation program. Again, there's another program we're doing called Size Up. It's just if their business wants to expand, ready to expand, we have this app that we're going to introduce where they can look at the neighborhoods and learn some demographics and psychographics about the area. Lots of data that allows them to say, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can take a leap and grow my business as the consumer economy starts to grow. Then also, we'll spend more money on COVID-related awareness, lots of community outreach. I'm currently working with Miguel Acosta on a community ambassadors program on the South Side. And they've been going to homes, helping with tutoring for essential worker parents or grandparents who are working with kids, but we're also spreading the word about vaccinations and COVID awareness. And so we might expand that program going into the summer when the kids are home, and some will go to camps and some won't. Then we're also looking at workforce development, looking at soft skills training. We have a lot of kids graduating from high school that don't have any jobs prospects right now, but we could start them on the path to workforce development by doing some soft skills training. Soft skills training as in customer service, learning how to use a computer. What does Microsoft do? What does other tools do that would allow you to maybe possibly do an internship at a program? Again, then also looking at YouthWorks and some of the training they're doing. And then we're working with the Sustainability Office of Public Utilities on a possible energy efficiency workforce project where we can do energy audits at the homes in these qualified census tracts to possibly help them upgrade their homes or repair their homes going into the new season. So those are some of the things that I've been looking at on the community and economic development side. As I've gone through these myriad of webinars and training seminars and information sessions, a couple of things that popped out from the National League of Cities. It says, what's the thinking around this recovery planning? And they talk about make recovery everyone's business. We're one city, and as one city, we look at the quality of life of the city, and this is a part of what we can do with this money is to increase the quality of life of those who have been affected. Advance equity and opportunity, as Kira talked about, and I've been talking about with our digital divide and our eviction assistance, rental assistance, making sure people are whole. Unleash our local economy. That's where we feel that this recovery money could be used to help those businesses that were just floundering during the recession. And then zone for equitable and sustainable neighborhoods. Again, that's those qualified census tracts, looking at unemployment, looking at high poverty. What can we do to sort of uplift them in some way? And then speed delivery of essential services. We have been coming into the technology future, and I think Connect is a perfect way that you can look at how we're speeding up the delivery of services through Connect. Is just a great example of how we're using technology to make sure that we do disperse money to those in need. Leave no dollar behind. We're trying to make sure that happens. This money is coming in 2 tranches, so we need to know we have some time to do it, which is a good thing, whereas we only had about 6 weeks last year. But this allows us to sort of really think through it strategically, how to disperse this money to those in need. And then again, build a readiness culture. That just really means that get everyone prepared to be resilient through this pandemic. As we come to the back end, we all get fascinated. We're all aware of what the consequences are and use this money wisely for that purpose. And then there's one other fund that's coming up that we're anticipated. It's a capital fund. And we have not received the NOFA, which is the Notice of Funding Opportunity, but it would provide $10 billion to states to carry out capital projects. We talk about beautifying our neighborhood. We talk about this energy efficiency program. These are the type of things that could be used for these types of programs. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Something that we've been learning could come in the next 2 months before this Jobs and Infrastructure program starts to happen. But we're anticipating hearing more from the U.S. Treasury about this program. And with that, I will stand for questions and thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. We will go to questions. Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kara. Thank you, Rich, for the presentation. I really appreciate it. With the funds, I know that this is a great opportunity for us as a city to really invest in our community. And I would encourage us to really think through how we're going to invest this first influx of 7.5 million, because it's my understanding that we have 3 years to spend these resources. This isn't something we need to jump and get out the door and spend all the money in a year. We have 3 years from when we receive it to spend, as Rich said, spend every dollar. So I would just encourage us to really think long-term in that sense. What are not only the immediate needs going to be, but how can we assure that whatever resources and the investment we make, it's going to impact us for that long-term investment. I know that there's a lot of ideas being thrown out on how we want to invest the resources, but I didn't see a budget. Has there been a proposed budget of what we're looking at, how we're proposing to allocate this first round of 7.5 million?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, there is no budget. We know that we have $7.5 million in the first tranche, and then the second tranche comes in the next year, probably May, June next year. So that's really our budget. We're working backwards from those numbers, but there's no numbers necessarily attached to what Kira has explained or what I have explained. We have an estimate, but we don't have it as a budget because we're still getting clarity on the guidelines from the Treasury around what we can and cannot spend. So what we've been talking about is very close to what we thought the guidelines would be. So once we provide clarity on those guidelines, then we can start to look at how does that fit into the budget? Because most of the money could go to the community and not to the coffers of our city budget, because there's a lot of regulations around it. So,
right. So with that being said, when do you anticipate creating a budget based off of the information that it was probably enacted through ARP? What the resources can be used for? I know, in many other instances that I'm working with ARP funds, it's specifically laid out, like you said earlier. And I guess my question is, when do we anticipate a budget being developed?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, I would say in probably a month, Kira and I will have a really good sense of how much we're spending on what. It's just because it's sort of estimate, and some of these ideas that I expressed were kind of not pie in sky, but they were just ideas where, what does this cost? Here's the idea, but what will it happen in reality? So it's going to probably take another month. We're still waiting for the money, but it'll probably take another month on my side before I have a sense of, of the 7 million, I probably have 2 million in a budget number that I could use for those ideas, where Kira may have something that says, I need $4 million for what we're going to do based upon what we know the need is in the community. So it may be a month before we really know, and we can come back to you once we have a sense of that.
Okay. And go ahead, Carol. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia. I think also we obviously need to take guidance from our finance director, and in terms of what if there are needs that to shore up the city, what those be. And so we are making, as we've said, sort of a wish list by category, but we haven't put numbers to those yet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. And I guess for just logistic purposes, once the budget is proposed, then that would come back through the governing body committee process for final approval, et cetera.
Correct. Yeah, Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, yeah, the money, the 7.5 would come to you for approval, and then it would disperse through, I think, the budget, the finance director, like we did CARES Act.
Okay, thank you so much, and I wish you all the best as you're working with your wish lists, and probably we'll have to dwindle it down and figure out what gets cut, what we keep. But like I said, I would keep in mind, the 3-year time period. Let's figure out how we can get the best use of this. We don't have to put this out the door next week. We can invest in our community for the next 3 years. With that, no other questions. Thank you, Kira. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Councilor Casa-Sanchez, your hand is up.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Karen Rich, for the presentation and for digging into all of the details on this. I know it gets complicated. Yeah, I think Councilor Garcia, as he said, we do have some more time, more than the CARES Act, where we had to spend that in 3 months or something very quick like that. And I think it is that balance between how do we plug some of the immediate holes where people are really, really struggling and make sure that we get those dollars out, as well as some of those long-term investments. I think one of the things I've really been struggling with, Kira, you know, this is probably your wheelhouse a little bit, of how we start to identify some of the root causes of the problems that we're seeing. So for example, you mentioned behavioral health. You know, is it that there's just not enough providers? I know that a lot of people, therapists are, you know, pretty jam-packed these days, and you have a hard time getting in. So even if you do have dollars to support it, and also that kind of disconnect between unemployment rates being higher than normal, as well as people can't hire anybody, and how we start to kind of put these puzzle pieces together for figuring out where our root issues are. And I'm just curious what work is going on there, so we can, as Councilor Garcia alluded to, really make sure that we're investing wisely and not necessarily guessing. We think this is the problem, let's throw some dollars at it, but understanding how we can be really strategic in this money, with this money.
Madam Chair, Councilor Casa-Sanchez, you know, if we look at the root causes of behavioral health issues, to take one example, you know, there have been a lot of, it's complex, as you know, and there have been a lot of studies about adverse childhood experiences, you know, as a really sort of a very root cause of not only behavioral health problems, but medical health, you know, physical health problems, and other social ills. So as we look at investment, I think, and the proportion of the investment, I think we can also think about investment in our young people. And, you know, we just had the presentation on youth programs. That's a great place to potentially invest, or look, you know, for ways to really make sure that, you know, some of the first encounters that children have are not violent, that they're not, you know, suffering from exposure to poverty in a way that creates longer term problems. I mean, we could get very philosophical here, but I think what Councilor Garcia is saying is absolutely right, that, you know, we really need to think about a both and here. We want to plug you know, make sure people who've been in crisis are sort of stabilized with these funds. That's the intention of the ARPA funds. But how can we do so in a way that builds a system that will sustain for a long time and have people have what they need in the safety net for a long time, and get out of poverty essentially, and out of crisis and into a longer term. So I think, how are we doing that? I think we're talking to our community partners about what they're seeing around their concerns. That's what we can do, you know. So I think as we've had informal conversations, we may want to look at having more formal conversations so there's real engagement with the community around what they're seeing the needs are. So we're not leaving people out. The equity lens of the ARPA funding is really encouraging, because it charges us to be inclusive, to really hear the voices of the people that have felt left out, have been left out of maybe decisions, and certainly benefits and systems. So I'm doing that by just reaching out to partners right now. We have our committees, you know, within community services, like the Human Services Committee, the Children Youth Commission, the Women's Commission, the Veterans Committee, Mayor's Youth Advisory Board, you know, and so we can, I think we can and should utilize that committee structure to really present. We can present similarly to what we've done tonight to some of those bodies and get feedback, invite the public to give feedback, and your constituents, you know, anything, and use your networks as well, because I think it is thankfully a process where we can take more time.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know that it's really, it's complex and it's nuanced and it's multifaceted, and there's problems that have, it's interesting. It's COVID brought this money in for problems that we have been facing for, you know, decades, centuries, take your pick, a long, long time. So I appreciate looking at that. And this is something, you know, Rich and I have been talking about, obviously with my networks. I'm sorry, my cat is really into me right now. It's a little distracting. And looking at childcare, and so I know that there's kind of this two piece to it, as Rich was saying, there's this COVID recovery, and then there's hopefully these other dollars coming that would look at how do we build for the future. I guess just trying to balance those out, because it seems like some of these are also how do we build for the future ideas, but we should get more information about whether or not more of those dollars are coming before the second tranche comes through, correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Casa Sanchez, that's correct. Right now, the debate in Congress is about this Jobs and Infrastructure Act. I was looking for I have this little chart that shows kind of what the president wants to allocate those funds for. There's a debate in Congress on both sides about, how much it's going to cost. But this ARPA Act is really about that stabilization. People have been affected by the COVID pandemic, and that first CARES Act funding really didn't help as much as we thought. And so this is what this is supposed to do. And as Kira said, it digs deeper. It talks about equity. It talks about behavioral health. It talks about even cybersecurity for the water systems, right? How do you make sure that we stabilize this area? And then as we move into this next phase, as we talk about jobs and infrastructure, that's where kind of the innovation and resiliency piece comes into play, where we think about childcare. I think Kira talked about both sides, where we need to have funding for childcare, which we could do through the Recovery Act, but we don't have any childcare providers. So we need to incubate those types of industries and make sure that we come in. So that's where that second piece comes into play from that standpoint. So we hope by July, I'll cross my fingers, that Congress has come together before a big recess and has passed the next round of this recovery that our president and most of the members of the Congress are looking at. So
wonderful. I mean, it's interesting. It's both exciting and a little daunting, because it's this incredible opportunity at this moment of this infusion of dollars that can really potentially, help with some of these issues. It's a big task. Thank you. It's quite the decision. It's going to be something that I know that we're really going to be looking at. So can feel the weight of it. We're still collecting data through Connect, correct? So even though our dollars are gone, hopefully people are still reaching out. And so we're still getting some information there about where some of our big challenges are. Is that correct, Kira?
Madam Chair, Casa Sanchez, yes, that's been ongoing. Although we haven't had the flexible funds to help with rent since the CARES money, the counties continues to have some flexible funds in their contracts, and also many of the partners in the network have access to flexible funds, so that can still help. And yes, all of the screenings are continuing, and we continue to collect that data on people's needs. Another thing we're doing with Connect is we'll be partnering with the 211 system, and so people will be able to call 211 and get connected into Connect, hopefully within the next few months here. So that'll be quite helpful, and we'll be able to collect data in that way as well.
That's really exciting. I think I've told you many times about my passion for 211. So I'm very excited to hear that that's happening. Thank you for moving that forward. Okay, I think those are all my questions for now. I'll let you know if I remember any. Thank you again so much. I really appreciate it.
Great. Councilman Villarreal, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the information and the presentation, and for Rich digging into all those bureaucratic documents. It's a lot. I don't envy that, because I think it's challenging. They're trying to cover all areas. But it also, I think it sounds like it's relatively unrestricted, more or less. I mean, there's restrictions that you mentioned, but there's still a lot of possibilities. So that's good to hear. And I'm happy to hear that there's a large portion that will be looking at small business support, and then as well as vulnerable community members and individuals and households in crisis that were already in crisis and this has been exacerbated because of the pandemic. So I'm happy to hear about that. You did mention something that I wanted to follow up on about supporting essential workers and and having a premium pay. So
Yes.
do you know more about that? Can you
Yeah,
explain more about that?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I hope everybody's good in the family, but the premium pay piece, I'm still digging into the pages of the Treasury Act, and what I'm finding, it's really about if example is of a restaurant wasn't able to pay any sick pay for someone who had left because of COVID, and that person was basically out of work with no income, and that's a premium pay, as in we could then look at ARPA funds as a way for these small businesses that don't have health care or sick pay, et cetera, that they can use that money so that they can make sure that when people come to work, they're all safe. And if someone says I'm tested positive, or there are people who've tested positive, that they can send them home and be able to give them some funding so that they're not without any income just because of the health issues that are there. So that still digging into that, but that's what I think some of the premium pay is around for. Kira, you have.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, one thing we are hearing, I just talked with Marcela Diaz today from Somos and Pueblo Unido, is still that, one reason people may not be getting vaccinated is because they don't want to leave work, they don't want to take time off work. And so that can also help with the vaccination effort potentially, if that's, if that's done. And we've heard that all through the pandemic, that people just weren't taking off work, or they had to completely leave and quit their jobs because the small businesses weren't able to financially provide sick leave. So that'll be huge if that's a piece of it. That's a huge equity creator right there.
Do you think that could possibly translate into hazard pay?
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, but think of it as it might be a new category under Connect that a community, a resident, especially as an essential worker, could come to Connect to say, I am leaving my job because of COVID conditions, or I'm asymptomatic, whatever it is, and I don't have any money because there's no health care there. And I would like to be compensated in some way while I'm gone. And that's what that premium pay is, kind of an idea around that.
Okay, I guess I'm just,
yes.
I'm thinking about like people that are hesitant to go back to work because they're fearful of being exposed to people that haven't been vaccinated. So I guess I'm just thinking that if we can translate it into hazard pay and make it kind of a sick leave kind of aspect, but then also just protection while you're in work and I don't know how this works. I just think that I've heard a lot about hazard pay and we have not been able to implement any of that here. I don't know about in New Mexico, but at least here in Santa Fe. So I'm just really interested to see how we can direct that for hazard pay connections for our workers, essential workers. So.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, Kira and I have had this conversation for many months now. So we have been thinking about how we can, stem the tide just to lower our infection rates. This could be just one small thing that we can do. And so she and I have had, I'm thinking about the summertime. She was asking about, is there a way that we can use CARES Act if it comes out to pay for those small businesses that don't have any health care for people that they leave? Can they have some sort of, again, hazard pay? So that they don't lose their job and they don't lose their sense of income. So
I think I'm thinking more like a subsidy, not subsidy, and a bonus for being in a work condition that's feels dangerous, considering that we're still, in a pandemic. I don't know how it works in other cities, but I know that they have implemented that, but I don't know enough about how it works. Like if the employer gets the funding to support that, so I would love to know more about how what that could look like for us. And then the other thing I wanted to ask, because I got questions from community members about how the ARPA funds will be utilized. And there was a clear indication that people do not want this funding to go towards police department budgets, specifically around body cameras or weapons or any technology that they're requesting, or saying in order for us to reform or even to like look into this next iteration of support with the ARU, the Alternative Response Unit, that we need more money. So can you tell us, can you verify for us that the funding, this ARPA funding, will not go towards police budget?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, no, I can't say that. I mean, from my perspective, it's a conversation that we all need to have with each other and the council needs to weigh in on and the public needs to weigh in on. You know, we have seen a great boon from the Alternate Response Unit, and I'd love to see that continued. Some other cities have domestic violence units. We don't have one. That could make a huge difference to our community. The police can be an avenue of response, and are currently an avenue of response for behavioral health needs. And in terms of equipment, you know, I'm learning a lot in my current position about not all equipment can be lumped into one category. There's, you know, equipment that militarizes the police force. There's equipment that better allows community policing, frankly, and accountability. So I think we have to have those conversations, and I look forward to bringing them forward to this body and the governing body and the community health and safety task force as well.
Well, I guess I bring up because we didn't cut anything in the police budget, and I still don't believe that we actually froze positions in last year's budget, because we talked about that. And then this year, I think we were pretty generous about how we supported police and fire in their budgets, even though there's lots of vacancies in police. So I'm not opposed to like saying that, yeah, we Alternative Response Unit, that needs to be beefed up, yet we still have these vacant positions. So when I think about ARPA funds, I think about actually like these needs of crisis that are like the most vulnerable community members, and really directing that towards community members that are hurting right now, and also just about our housing situation that we're in right now. It's not going to continue. I don't see it continuing that we're going to have more accessible housing for our community members that live here. So I personally want to see funding used to be able to support those short-term needs that we talked about that have long-term benefits, and not necessarily thinking about how to beef up a budget that we already actually are supporting very well. But reorganizing how our funding can be used within our budgets. I don't see ARPA as being another addition to just add on to our to what we already are giving to our law enforcement, I guess. I just really want to emphasize that. I feel like ARU is an important model, and I want to keep doing that. But I'm curious, is ARPA funding being able to support those kind of things anyway?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, from my reading, actually ARPA funding does actually name alternative response units. I will point out that the budget for alternative response units sits substantially in the fire department, not the police department, in its current form. So just a fine point, but actually some of the ARPA funding and the reading I've done around it is actually about reform for public safety, and it points out that that was a crisis that also erupted during the pandemic. And you know, that is something that all cities and communities are sort of living in the wake of, is, you know, a reevaluation of how we do public safety and how we do policing. And so I think to just sort of categorically say it's not going into the police budget, I don't think that's as fine-tuned, you know, as we need to be in it all, but we need to really dig down into what that means. You know, and the other thing is, you know, looking at crime statistics and, you know, communities in crisis. communities in crisis still need a police response of some kind, and it needs to be a robust and proper police response. And so, this is a longer term debate and conversation, but I think exactly the kinds of conversations that a ARPA opportunity it charges us with having.
Yeah, I'm not debating that we don't need police support. What I'm saying is that this funding to me is like people that are most in need and in crisis. And we passed a budget that's pretty generous, I think, for our police. So that's why, and yes, I know the ARU comes from the fire department, and that in itself is a problem. It shouldn't just come from the fire department. It also needs to be coming from the police. I think we have plenty of funding to be able to look at how we can already utilize or better utilize our staff versus trying to say, oh, in order to do reform, we need more money. That's what's happening across the country. And I don't think that that's something that so-called reform needs money to push. We just need to look at it in a better way, like how we utilize our staff, and so that they're best supported and that the police can be in the places they need to be, and then have other folks that are more trained in those areas to be able to be directed. And I know that's what we're trying, but I'm just putting that out there, that I think that's something that we need to discuss. And the community members, I think, also will have an opinion about that too. So I just want to bring that up because I just see ARPA as just this other kind of beast and essential workers, and like looking at our economy and looking at people that are vicariously housed in our housing situation in Santa Fe. And so I'm just wanting it to be directed in a most equitable way that's really supporting underserved community members. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Garcia, is your hand up for a second time or an old hand?
That's an old hand. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Okay. So interesting conversation. I know we've gotten some emails about where this funding goes and whether it goes to police budgets or not police budgets. So look forward to continuing that. I mean, I guess it also, goes to where we started with our questions and about the balance, right, between sort of long-term investments, about how we change some of these systemic things versus, helping with the need right now that's been created as a result of the pandemic. So really interesting. I'm curious, can we talk a little bit more about what we can do with this funding around vaccinations? And so you touched a little bit about helping people access vaccines. And I guess the other thing I'm really concerned about is how do we overcome vaccine hesitancy? And I think we use some of the CARES Act money to, do public relations campaigns around masks and, COVID safe practices. And just curious, are you thinking, and are you able to use this money? It seems like it may be in the grand scheme of things, not the, won't be the highest priority for the funds, and yet, if we don't get more people vaccinated, we're not going to get out of this pandemic. And I really worry. I'm not happy about the CDC recommendation around masks. And I really worry, how do we continue to get out of this? So that's a long-winded way of asking about what else do we do around vaccine hesitancy with this money.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, I have a couple of slides I'd like to just share, if that's okay. I have a couple more that provide a little bit more detail around both the questions that Councilor Villarreal said and what you had just asked about vaccination. So give me a second, I'm just teeing it up. But the National League of Cities has done a little bit more reading of this Treasury guidelines than I have. But so we had talked about this premium pay, and this premium pay guidelines, it says it allows a municipality to provide up to $13 per hour above regular wages to an individual. Councilor Villarreal's aspect. Another of eligible uses, they talk about COVID-19 mitigation and prevention. So to your question, Madam Chair, all the money could be spent on COVID mitigation and prevention. So we will allocate money for that. And I think to Councilor Garcia's point, we have to be strategic about it and make it over a period of time. Just don't throw the money out there as soon as we get it and be done. This pandemic is going to take a while to abate. And so these are some of the other areas that go. And another slide I just wanted to show is that this is what they're talking about, direct cash that could be happening, homelessness, childcare, and education. These are all been affected by COVID. And so these are presumption of availability inside these qualified census tracts. And so I'm trying to figure out whether we can expand it to our opportunity zones, which are a little larger part of the city, but those 4 large qualified census tracts, these are completely eligible based upon what Kira may know from Connect and how to disperse them from that standpoint. So I wanted to share those couple of slides that I received from the National League of Cities around your question about prevention and vaccination, that we can definitely allocate money to that. And I've already had a conversation with the team that's been helping with Christine on more public outreach and programs that are deeper over the next at least 9 months.
Okay. Kira, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or?
Well, I think, Madam Chair, that, understanding why people are not getting vaccinated is key, and then we can target the funds appropriately. In some cases, maybe because they don't want to take a day off work, and in which case we need to look at that sick leave and working with the businesses, and in some cases it may be about access. If it's about a need for education, we can also invest in materials, as Rich was saying, that would, and partnering with organizations that can be trusted messengers for accurate information about vaccines. I think all of that is, I think we did really well during this pandemic in a lot of ways as a city in terms of thinking and setting up structures. So we have a lot to build on. We're not starting from scratch. We have an information campaign. We have the Connect program. We have, a lot of things that we're doing around vaccination now that we can continue to do, and we're learning from how to improve on them. So I think, I'm just going to also put in a plug for trusting people to know what they need and giving them the resources they need to do that. And that is direct cash assistance. It's very powerful, it's very empowering, and it creates equity. What people who are low income don't have is income. Period. The end. In some ways, it's very simple. So how can we use the funds to get people more on par with people who didn't have those same kinds of problems during the pandemic? And I think direct cash payments are a key.
Okay, thank you. I'm struck by the fact that the challenge we had at the end of last year getting out the CARES Act money and how fast that had to happen, and what an enormous lift that was to get that money spent. And now to have, another pot at almost equally, larger, but this first piece, very similar in size, and to have, a little breathing space to really look at how to get it out in the best ways possible. I would agree with Councilor Cassett-Sanchez that it's, you feel the weight. It's still a big responsibility, but you have to, at least it feels like there's a little room to breathe to figure that out. So I'm just struck by what you all did the end of last year compared to now where we are, but still lots of work to be done. So, all right, I don't see any other questions. Thank you. I've been looking forward to diving into this. I think this is just the beginning of our conversation, and really appreciate all the work, and I can't imagine digging through what you were reading, Rich.
Yes.
it's got to be something. So you're reading it. I also can't imagine the people who write it, but
Yeah, they do. They took them 2 months, but yes, it's a 9-point type, by the way. So.
No, I know, tiny. Yeah, so make sure you I don't know, do
Change my
something.
glasses.
Yeah, do something for eye strain. All right, thank you, everyone. It's been very interesting. We will move on to matters from staff. Jennifer, do you have anything tonight?
I have nothing tonight, Madam Chair.
Okay, matters from the committee. Seeing no matters from the committee, matters from the.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Yep, Councilor Rivera.
Yeah, I just wanted to take this opportunity to let you all know, I'm sure you've seen it, but remind everybody about the Chain Breaker Collective free vaccine event, kids bike raffle, bike repair clinic, Saturday, May 22nd at the Southside Library. So please, if, get the word out, send the email and the flyer to everybody that you can and try to make this a successful event. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Vaccines and bikes, perfect. All right, with that, I don't think there's anything else from the committee. We have our next meeting Wednesday, June 2nd. I can't believe it's already June. Anyway, thank you all, and we're adjourned. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night,
Good night.
everyone.